Thank you for that kind introduction, and I'm so glad to be here with you once more. And as I look around in the audience, I'm glad to see a whole lot of younger faces here today. But of course, when you get to be my age, everybody's young. But I do see a difference in it. You know, we need all kinds of people to be involved in what's going on in their community. And the one thing that I do like about coming here, I have met many people who are concerned about issues that I'm concerned about and things that we should be doing to make this a better place for all Alaskans, regardless of race, creed, or color. And so when I come to you, you know, sometimes I'm excited about some things that's happening, sometimes I'm disappointed, but being a legislator or a politician, which I don't like to call myself that, you know, sometimes the wheels of progress move very, very slow. And you have to have a commitment to continue the work that you think is important. And so as I come to you today, I want to say to you that it takes a whole community, not just the people that's serving in the legislature. There's only 60 of us there, and we represent a small areas where we come from. But the laws that we make, the policies that we make, affect everybody in Alaska. And so I say I represent all of you. You don't elect me, but I represent you with my vote. George Washington Carver, an African-American scientist and educator, and also was an inventor, and some of you might have heard of him and the peanut. Well, he had a saying, and this is what he said: how far you go in life depends on your being tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and the strong. Because someday in your lifetime, you will have been in one of those categories, or all of those categories. So we must think not only of ourselves, and I know we have family units that we really want to do the best things that we can do, but first we need to learn to love ourselves, and we need to learn to love others, and we need to work to strive to do the things that we think that's going to leave this world in a better world than it was when you came here. That's my philosophy. I have a few bills that I want to talk to you about that I think you can help make a difference in this legislature. And I'm going to say a little bit about them. The first thing that I'm going to bring up, I know that education is important, and I know that we have in our jails a large percentage of natives and African Americans serving time in jail, and many of them could be out of jail, should not be there in the first place because they were not given fair sentences or whatever got them there, but we know that we are overrepresented in those areas. So I'm going to speak to that also. I know that you care about the education of your children, and I'm going to speak to that too, because parents and friends and other people can make a difference in what happened with our kids in the schools. The one bill that I'm going to bring up that's been around for a long time, I came to the Senate in 2001, and Georgiana Lincoln was there, and at that time she was pushing the Alaska flag song and a hate crimes bill, and all those bills are still around today, 2012. They have not passed yet. The second verse of the Alaska's flag song, state flag song, is Senate Bill 94. And that bill has gone through the Senate, had made it to the floor of the House, and was getting ready to go to rules when someone stood up and asked that that bill be returned to Judiciary Committee because that individual wanted it in his committee. And that's where that bill is at this time. On the House side in Judiciary. And even though I have requested a hearing and spoke with the chair of that committee, he has not scheduled it for a hearing. And that's where you can come in and help by asking that that bill be heard. When that bill was introduced this time around, it had another sponsor last year. She worked with it for 2 years and decided that she would give it up, and I picked it up again. And that's where we are this day. And if we don't get that bill passed this time around from the House side, it has to start all over another time in 2013 and go through the same process that it goes through every 2 years when that bill is introduced. And if you really are serious about wanting to have a hearing on that, speak your conviction on it. You can send emails, you can call, you can write letters, you can do a whole lot of things to say that you're interested in testifying on that bill and that you want it to be heard. It might help. In that song, everything is mentioned in the song, and I think it would be very helpful to have something that would mention the native population in the song, and the second standard does that. Now, there's a lot of people say that, you know, we don't want to change the situation. It's been fine the way it is, and it should stay that way, and so therefore you don't need a second verse on the song. If you feel different, then you have a right to call. And I have given out some papers to the person in charge of this meeting today that she's going to give around, so you would have who to contact and who you should call to voice your opinion or ask that a hearing be held on the bill. Because of the problem that we have with so many of our young men in jail, in prison, there's a bill that I had introduced that I thought would help in some way, and it's called the Felon's Right to Vote. Now, once you've served all your term in this state, time in jail, even when you're on probation, they will not allow you to vote. And this particular bill would allow that. If you serve your time and you are able to register to vote, give you that right so that you might have it. It's been proven fact that those people that have the right to vote, sometimes it helps them feel more like they're part of their community, that they're a whole citizen again, and they will go and vote. They will try to keep themselves out of trouble. I know that it works. It works in many, many states. There's no reason why it would not work here. It's Senate Bill number 7. And if you are interested in, there is about 10,000 people that are eligible for that. If this bill would pass, they could immediately register to vote, even in the next election coming up. And we need to encourage everybody to register to vote. I'm not telling you how to vote, who to vote for, where you should be a Democrat or a Republican or what, but you should at least want to be able to vote and let your voices be heard. And if you don't do that, you don't have a right to say anything. Don't criticize something that you don't try to help make difference. And the other bill that Georgiana was trying for many years, even when she was on the House side, was the hate crime bill. And every year I have introduced that bill since I've been back in the legislature, and it has yet to pass. And that bill at this time, it's a possibility that we could get that passed this year. It's Senate Bill 11. And the papers that I've passed out will tell you what committee that it's in and what needs to be done to have a hearing. Now, education is important to me, and I know that it's important to all of you out there. But one of the problems that we have a high suicidal rate within our state. And I introduced a bill, Senate Bill 137, to provide training, information to all personnel that works within the school system, not just the teachers, it could be the janitors or anyone that's working there, to help them with that problem. And that bill right now is just waiting for another hearing to be held, and it is also over the House side. That's where it is at this point. Past the Senate, it's in the House. It's Senate Bill 137. Senate Bill 137. The other bill that I introduced that has to do with education In this state, you do not have to go to school until you're 7 years old. That's what the book says. That's what's in the law. That's what the policy is. And it also says in there that when you're 16 years old, you can drop out of school at any time that you like without your parents' permission. And you know, sometimes that's not a wise decision, because at 16 years old, many times you don't know what's in your best interest. And I had introduced a bill to lower the age limit from 7 to 5. And it has come around every year and almost it never passed. So now I'm asking that it be dropped to 6. But I don't know why we can't do it, because 95% of our children go to kindergarten now. We've had kindergarten for many, many years, even though you don't have to send your child to kindergarten. Most parents do. And so therefore, reducing the age down to 5 would just meet the standards that we are already observing. And that bill is out there that needs to have, it is also ready to be heard, and it could pass before the session ends. And if you are interested in that bill, you could get the paper that I have given to the person in charge of this meeting today, along with what I just told you, and that you could work on that particular bill. It would help with dropout rate, truancy. It would encourage youngsters to finish high school. It doesn't mean, and I introduced another bill where you stay there. This same bill would allow you to stay in school, but it didn't say that you had to stay there till you were 18 years of age. It says when you graduate. So if you graduated at age 15, you could leave school. But if you haven't, they'd like for you to stick around at least until you're 18, hoping that you would graduate by that time. And those bills are quite important. I would like for you to consider some of the bills that I have mentioned. And the other two bills, one that's in education, is a pre-K bill that would allow 4-year-olds to go to pre-K. The sooner we can get our kids into school, the better off they're going to be. They need early care between the age of 0 and 3, but they can also be ready to learn at age 4. And that bill has also had some hearings on it. It now sits in finance on the Senate side, waiting for a hearing. And so there's not much time left. If you're interested in making sure that that's available to our young people, you may get that information and look for Senate Bill number 6. And the last bill that I want to discuss with you is, I know many of you have heard of Denali Kid Care. And that particular program provides insurance to people that's above the poverty level. And at this point, ours is at 175% above poverty level. The bill that I introduced would bring it up to 200. In 2008, that bill passed the House and the Senate, and the governor vetoed it. I came back and introduced that bill again last year, and the bill now sits in rules, because when I got it to the floor, I didn't have the 11 votes when we took the vote on it. So it went down a 10-10 split. So it now sits back in rules and waiting to come back to the floor again. So if it passes the Senate, it will be sent to the House. But the one reason the bill did not pass, but because the governor claims that he vetoed the bill because he was not going to increase the number of abortions that might be paid for out of the Denali Kid Care Fund, even though it was already established that very little money was coming out for that, and that they automatically paid them for out of Medicaid money. And they also said that there was not much of an increase to the state, because 70% of the money that we pay for our insurance for the kids, 70% of that money comes from the federal government. And so we only have to put 30% of the money in. So at this time, we're losing millions and millions of dollars on insurance coverage that we could have for our youth and our youngsters. And that bill, it covered pregnant women as well. But that bill was vetoed. I've been told if it passes again in the same form, that the governor would veto it again. So we're looking at ways on how we could get around that. But if that bill is important to you, follow it and see where it's going, because we need to do something about making sure that bill passes before the session is over. I know that you hear a lot about politics at this time because this is reapportionment year, and so our lines have been redrawn, and 59 out of the 60 people that's serving in the legislature will have to run for their seats this year. So 2013 in January, when you come down here, when sections start again, you have a lot of new people. You have some of the old same people that's already serving, but the makeup is going to be quite different. And I don't know if you know that the only somebody that's not running is a senator from this state, this city, and that's Egan, Senator Egan. Everyone else would be running. And some of them are not very favorable because some are going to have to run against other legislators in order to win the seat. So we know some people won't come back. There'll be some new people. I would hope that you would be looking at what's going to happen, because you're going to be elected a new president this year, another president, or keeping the president we have. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to hear from these people, but you should be concerned about the people that are going to represent you in your state as well, and making sure that we put people there that will be caring enough to want to address the issues that are interested to you and that you support. I know I don't have very much time. I just want to say before I take my seat that I want you to remember, no matter what you do, never forget from which you come. Each one of you bring a gift here, and that gift is you. And there's lots that you can do. You don't have to be old to do it. And you don't have to wait for somebody to ask you to do it. You should be willing to step out and make a difference, because you can make a difference. And I'll give you one more quote from George Washington Carver. And this is what he says. He says that education is the key to unlock the golden door of freedom. So let's continue to work together and achieve an uncommon result. With you, we can make a difference. And in my closing word, I'll say to you, when you've done all that you can, stand. Stand for justice. Stand for equality. Stand for what's in the best interest of your people. And you can't go wrong. May God bless you.
Thank you. One of the points of my resume she didn't tell you is I'm the co-chair of finance on the House side. And how do you drop a big bomb and make everybody happy? But as the co-chair of finance, I have 10, 12, 15 people that tell me the financial conditions of the state. And let me back up first. The other day, I went to Costco. It took me over an hour to get in there. People were lining up complaining. And one guy said, "We voted for you to do what was right for us." About that time, a state rep walked up and was standing there. And I says, "Glad you came here, Lance." It was Representative Pruitt. But I says, "You got to remember that my peers in the House voted me to be the co-chair of the House Finance Committee and show fiscal restraint and responsibility of the general well-being of the state. A little step higher than just being a rep for the district." And I keep getting those threats, and they say, "Well, we get rid of you." Well, I'll be 65 this year, so what? I'll go back fishing. I haven't quit fishing. I've been actually 44 years that continuous fishing. And I said I wasn't looking for a job when I got this. I ran because I wanted to give people a choice. Mind you, the district that I ran in was primarily Democrats, but primarily Alaska Natives. And the way and I only won by 66 votes. And I think I was the first Republican in this district to ever been elected. But I tell people I come from strong roots. I come from the village of Cluckwan, I'm quarter Hotch, quarter Willard. I saw but I'm disguised by Thomas. And somebody says, so where did the Thomas name come from? And I said, California. So, but Centene, I don't know if there's anybody, old people out here, not anymore. Mildred Sparks was my grandmother. And she's one of the first emeritus in the ANS here. So we come from strong political roots. I found a letter that was written from I think it was, oh boy, she was the Grand Camp president, and the Grand Camp, when they're fighting for the Claims Act, I'm trying to remember who the president was at that time, but he wrote back, said, people just don't realize how much work we are doing to get our status. And I looked at my mom's logs back then, 10 cents, 25 cents. This was people who were poor were putting money together for people to go to Washington, D.C. Fred Paul Sr. And I told Rosita that I would give her that letter, but it's a piece of history. And when you look at what our people did to get where we're at today, and you see it in writing like that, it's amazing. I've had it folded up sitting in my file at home, and I'm going to give it to see Alaska. So we keep running forward. That's why I tell Al, I'm a fisherman. I came home from Vietnam in '68 and went fishing in 1969. And I'm first, and then I've been fishing ever since. Halibut fishing, shrimp fishing, still commercial fish. I've had a limited entry that was given to me by the state. Very few of those around at all. But, Senator Davis has made some good comments, and I'm going to just talk about some legislation that I have introduced and passed, and now all sitting in the Senate. Now, that's the way the game is played. The senator says, get her bills out. I'm saying, get our bills out. I'm the co-chair of the Veterans Caucus, and the bills that I run aren't my personal bills. Usually they're from the people, veterans primarily. I have one that's a renewable energy bill that's helped the villages get on hydro wind energy to help them get along. But one of the bills that we did get passed, and again, these are all sitting on the other body, was to, actually this one passed last year and got signed by the governor, and it was expedited professional licensure for military spouses. The military will be transferred 9 times in their careers. So let's say that you move with your husband, you come to Alaska, you cannot practice your business, your professional. If you're a doctor, you have to go through the whole process here. So the state now is going to give you a license for, I think it's 90 days or 6 months to get redocumented within the state, so that you don't lose the income. Military, compared to what I got paid, they were getting paid big money. When I went to Vietnam, I was getting $177 a month. And I said, geez, and they thought I was overpaid. But it's the way to keep the family stable. Good income keeps families together. So that was one that we worked on last year. This year we have a military credit for professional licensing. When you come out and get discharged from the military, if you've been in there 6, 8, 10 years, and let's say whether you're a plumber, airplane mechanic, truck driver, you can go to the state, go to the professional licensing and say, look, I've been driving for 8 years as a professional truck driver in the Army. I want to get a CDL. And they will accelerate and have hearings on that and help you and get so you can continue to be a CDL driver, a plumber, a boiler man, whatever it is, or whatever is required to be licensed in the state. Everything but attorneys, I believe, right? It's one thing that professional license has no oversight on. One of the bills that we just passed yesterday was the funeral protest bill. And I don't know if anybody likes that or not, but it prohibits people from protesting within 150 feet of the cemetery or where the funeral services are happening. Why? Again, this was a Veterans Caucus issue. People were protesting at funerals in down south, and we in Alaska like to think that we're going to respect the family who is in mourning and support them. We know how it's done. Our people have been doing that for years. When we're in mourning, we're there together, and that's what we're saying. leave the people be. And it's 1 hour before the funeral, 1 hour before the cemetery, that you can't be there. You let them go. Let people, rest their son, their husband, whoever it is, in peace. And it's all people, not just military. They could protest because the guy was a gay, or she was a lesbian, or he was an activist. Whatever it is, this will prohibit people from protesting that, which I think is long overdue, and we should, again, we know how to respect our dead. Even if we didn't like him, we don't say anything bad about him for a long time after. Try to, anyway. How's that? One of the ones that I like is, and it's taken a while. I was in Vietnam in 1968. I was 20 years old. I turned 21 there after 6 months. It was a welcome home Vietnam Veterans Day. It's April 30th. And I told them on the floor, contrary to rumors, it's not the day I left Vietnam. I left the night before Thanksgiving in '68. It was actually the last day, the last soldier left Vietnam. So I got a lot of calls from the veterans who are happy because the protesting that went on when we came home was not right. I'm looking around here. I don't see too many guys that were in Vietnam that I knew of. And we had a lot of protesting going on. It was not nice. I was 21 years old in Vietnam the day before, San Francisco the next day to go through the hippie protesters. You didn't feel very good. You were like, wow. Yesterday or 2 days before that, you're getting shot at, mortars, rockets, all the excitement of war. Next thing, you're in San Francisco. And you talk about a change of life. 10 months and 23 days I was in Vietnam, and the adrenaline rushes were high. I told people I've only had one adrenaline rush since I got home, and that was after I pulled 4 bodies out of the water that people were drowning, and it's in my boat, and their boat sank. And they were young kids and 2 about 18, 19-year-olds. That freaked me out then. But I said, since then, I've never had one. But then in Vietnam, you have 2 or 3 or 4 a day. People drop the wrong, hear a round go off, and then you're running. But anyway, I always tell the boys, welcome home, and I thank them, the families. Those who were in Vietnam, and then now in our building we have some Iraqi vets who are starting to have trouble. And I told them to go seek counseling. And the best thing is don't hit your wife, don't hit your family, because they're going to be there with you. And that's what we had. And I'm going to make one quick little joke when I talk about this, the protesting. I tell them there's 2 things in life that I don't see anymore here. There's one person who said, I didn't vote for you. I voted for you. Never heard anybody that didn't vote for me, and never heard of anybody who was a protester. So I said, that's good. You don't admit it anyway. But they always, I said, I got so many votes, the poor guy that I ran against didn't get any. But I did finally have one person say, yeah, I didn't vote for you. But you're doing a good job. So the budget, I would talk capital budget because the operating budget, we're taking public testimony on. People don't like what we're doing, but we're headed for a deficit in 2 years. Means production of oil is falling so fast that we won't be able to sustain our operating budget here within 2 to 3 years. At the rate of growth, the operating budget was growing 7% a year for the last 7 years. So we're trying to restrain a little bit of growth if we can, and then look at it. Like I said, I have all these people standing back, but if you see these ads, when we started the pipeline, it was 2 million gallons, 2 million barrels a day. We're down to just below 600,000. When I came into the legislature 8 years ago, it was well over 800,000. And the only thing that's making us good is the price of oil. But you're paying for it because the price of energy is going up on you. So we live in a resource state, and it's a double-edged sword for us. Great, we get money, but it's at the backs of the people. I had a couple projects that I'm working on. And our good friend Walter Soboloff, a couple years ago, I saw him at Gold Medal and asked him how he was doing. And I knew he had cancer. He said he was doing fine. And he was sitting next to another guy underneath the basket there where he always sat. He said, my friend's going to the Matsu. And I said, why is he going there? Because that's the only veterans home we have in Alaska. We have one bed in Sitka, one in Juneau in the Pioneers Home for veterans. And then when Walter got really sick, I said, are you going to go to the Matsu? He looked at me, I'm going to stay home and die. So that made me think, we have no veterans home. One of the projects that I want to put in this year, and we worked on it last year to do the feasibility and buy some property, is to build a veterans nursing home in Haines. I believe it's 12 or 14 units, something like that. But it'll also be for brain injured soldiers. So, you know, and if Walter knew that we were going to do this, and he just smiled. At least he may not be home, but he's in Southeast. Everybody knows that Haines, the Southeast is prettier anyway, so. And we're going to call it the Walter Soboleff Veterans Home. But I went to that fundraiser the other day when Harvey Marvin and we all veterans went out here for Thomas McRae. I don't know how many went. But I was a pallbearer for his grandfather, probably the most decorated sergeant major in Southeast, and so I probably might change it to the Soboleff McRae. Sergeant Major Howard McRae was the sergeant major in the Army, and he was related to the Clayton family in Haines. If you know Sue Folletti, Jan Clayton, Jan Hill, Jean Clayton, that's her sister. And I think only a tribute to have the most decorated person I know in the military from Haines, and him and Walter both, because Walter meant a lot to me and probably everybody here. Last year, we funded a couple projects. Because I do the operating budget, I have the privilege of putting jobs in, if I feel we can do that and we need them. We put VSOs, veteran service officers, in each university to help the Iraqi, Afghanistan veterans getting out of the military, to help them with their career, help them going forward on their careers. If they want to go into the university, guide them. And so we have, I think Southeast finally got theirs going, person in place. And so all the universities have a veteran service officer to help the veterans on their career paths and encourage them and help them make out the grant applications or whatever they need, and encourage them to stay in there and get their education. We funded money last year for the Anchorage Veterans Memorial. They're rebuilding it. You know, that's a big thing to me. Again, it's a veterans thing. We put a couple $100,000, $250,000 towards that. They didn't want it all. They said, we want to get some money from you and get the thing working and going forward. And my staff, Aaron Schroeder, was thinking, you know, let me point out first, the moving wall is coming to Juneau, the Vietnam moving wall. And, you know, we can't find people to volunteer to help us on that. Aaron, her brother, is having a hard time. No organizations want to step forward, and he's trying to find and piecemeal people to come together. It'll be here for a week. It even took us a while to get the property. We asked the mental health to use the property over here at the, what is this, seaport by the Coast Guard, and they told us we had to have a nonprofit sign for it because of the liability. So I'm going to go talk to Rosita, see if Sea Alaska Heritage will sign that liability waiver so we can put the moving wall downtown where people can see it, and it's close to the Coast Guard, who will pay honor and tribute to their. We have boys from all over Southeast. I believe 2 from Juneau. Actually, could be 3. Paul Langley's brother was on there, but he came out of Craig, but left here from Juneau. Just for a side note, I helped Beth name that Spurl Gamble building out there at the university. Every time I'm driving out there, I go in there to go look at it. I grew up with Donald Spurl, so it was an honor to name that building after those 2 boys who got killed in Vietnam. The last bill that I've got, most of mine will go along, and I'm not going to fight for them because as co-chair of finance, the trading starts. They'll say, oh, he's the co-chair. So we want to put $1 million in the operating budget, and we want to do this. And I'm not married to any one of my bills. Let them answer to the veterans, let them answer to the people. I'm not going to sit out there and die on my sword and trade, because that's the typical way things are done. And so you want to kill my bill, go ahead. I'll put it in next year if I get reelected. HB 250, a renewable energy fund. We put that in several years ago, and we've been making headway on renewable energy in villages. IPEC has been a big recipient, and I can't tell you how many. I believe the report was we retired 10 million gallons of diesel so far in Alaska. That's a lot of savings to the villages. And so we're going to keep going forward. That bill is in House Finance. It's supposed to move out. The good thing about that bill is that it's sitting in Finance, and the sponsor on that side is Senator Hoffman. And Senator Hoffman and I happen to just sit on the same committee, the REFAC, we call Renewable Energy Fund Advisory Committee. So we think if we get that out of the House, that's going to be one bill we know that will pass because it continues to help everybody. So, and I know we got hearings again today. Yesterday we were surprised. I don't think we had 45 people testify in the operating budget. Last year, at this time, we probably had 400. I don't know if people are disillusioned or we did a good job in the operating budget or what, but there are very few people calling in saying they want things. Anchorage had maybe less than 20. So we were surprised. Maybe, like I said, we did a good job or we didn't, but we will wait and see. So anyway, if you have any questions, you can stop and ask.
Yes, good afternoon. Well, you know, I heard that we're having this native issue for me. Boy, we heard, you know, Bettye Davis is in town, so, well, coming down the road, I think I was going at 65 miles an hour. And they said, yeah, Bettye Davis is in town. So I wondered if she has Bettye Davis eyes, so she does. So, but anyway, Bettye, we really like to welcome you again in our home state of Alaska, which we're really proud to have you in there for fighting for us and working with us. Like you said, we all got to step up and do our part. And same for Bill Thomas, you know, we really appreciate that. But thank you very much. And one issue I'm really concerned about is our education. We should never be even making any cuts for our education. You know, we're one of the richest states in the union, you know, and we shouldn't even be considering thinking about cuts like that for our children, our grandchildren. We don't want to discourage them by making those kind of deals because we're always trying to make our kids go forward to better themselves, to make our state better at what we're doing with our children. So we want to make sure our people up there on the Hill, especially our governor, you know, really working hard with that. So I'd like to say thank you, Bettye, for coming down, and Brother Bill, for the chief, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'd like to make a comment on that, if you don't mind. As far as the education, and I'm sure all of you support education, but we all have our ideas about how much money should be going into it. And I was pleased to hear that my fellow legislator over here also has served on the school board. So he knows the predicament that the school boards are in and what we need to do to fund them properly. And I'm not trying to point the finger at anyone, but the governor did not increase the funding for education. He flat funded it, which means they're underfunded, and that there was a bill that was passed from the Senate side that's over on the House side that I hope will address that issue. And this particular bill is strictly to put money within the classroom, and otherwise, if it doesn't happen, there's lots of cuts that are going to be done in the district. Just for instance, here in Juneau, millions and millions of dollars will have to be taken out. And if we haven't told them by March the 15th how much money they're going to get, that's the time they have to pass out pink slips to the teachers so that they will be able to lay them off if we don't get the funding to them. So do everything that you can. The House is looking at that bill. And, you know, I don't expect for them to accept the bill just the way it is, because what we had done was try to fund it out for 3 years. But if we can't get the 3 years, we'll settle for 1 year or whatever they can do, because that at least get them through that. But I want you to know this state is not in trouble in the sense that we don't have the funds. We do have the funds. We have multiple savings, and we are the only state in the nation that has enough money that we can forward fund education every year. We already know how much money we have set aside for financing of education for 2014, not 13, 14. We're doing that. So do everything that you can to push the bill that's on the House side, and I'm sure eventually we will pass a bill and that will be helpful, but we need your help to make it happen.
Let me make a comment on that. It's not the place to debate a bill like this. This bill, if we fund it and keep going forward, right now we fund education at $1.2 billion. Does not include all the other funds. When we include all the funds that we put in it as a state, it's around $1.8 billion. It's huge. We, and I'm speaking as the co-chair of finance, and some of the finance members are afraid to put money into a formula-driven base project, because when we run into the wall of no money, unless somebody finds an big oil field somewhere, we can't cut a formula-driven program. It's easier to take away revenue sharing, low-hanging fruit, we call it, and they'll go out there and do that before you can touch education. We put $75 million into the teacher retirement this year. Why is that? Because anybody's a teacher, teacher's salaries are negotiated and they go out in steps. Every time they go out in a step, the retirement portion that we have to pay as a state goes up. So we paid an additional $75 million for teacher retirement this year. I think that the House is going to be headstrong in talking to some of the members. There'll be energy grants and another grant, but I think, Senator, it'll be around $30 million, but it won't go into the base. We're totally afraid of, again, foundation-driven formulas. You can't get out of it.
I just have to say that we are mandated to furnish money for education. That's what our statute tells us to do. And even if it's formula driven, that money goes directly into the classroom. And I have no problem with the energy and all the other things that we can give, but that does not fund the formula itself. And the formula funds the education for the teachers and the students.
Like I said, we didn't want to debate it here.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys can have that conversation later. Carolyn?
Just give them facts.
Hi, my name is Carolyn No. Senator Davis, on the House bill, or the Senate bill number 94, there was a bunch of us up at the Capitol singing that song to this person who would not listen to us. He closed the door on us when we were singing it. And when we were doing our testimonials, he did not stay in the room, and then he had the audacity to say, I don't understand, I haven't heard it. So how can we get him out of that? How can we change it from his desk to somebody else that will listen to us? We deserve that respect. If we're going to come up there and do testimonials, then they need to hear us. I was really livid and very embarrassed that he would close the door on us.
I'm not familiar with that, and I can't address that. And I guess you were talking about you were at the judiciary office where they have the meetings? Okay. All I can say is that, you know, the appointments are made at the beginning of each legislative session, and they are for 2 years. So the person that's the chair of judiciary this year, it's possible that he may be it the next time around, but he might not. That would depend on the makeup of the House and the Senate as to who will be chairing the various committees. I'm sorry for that kind of behavior, but it's nothing that we can do about the individual things that's happened. That's already happened. But still feel free to voice your opinion on any bill that you think you want to be heard on. And if things really get out of hand, you got a Speaker of the House, and you got the President of the Senate that you can speak to about a concern about one of their members. That's all I can say on that.
Okay, I know we have some hearings getting ready to start up on the Hill, so let's take 2 more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Martin Gardner, Representative Kukias, and Senator Davis. Thank you. One question. The Denali Kid Care Bill, what's the number?
It's number 5.
Number
And
5.
she's going to pass some of those papers out with those on there so you can get one when we get done.
Okay. Representative Thomas, I've lived in Anchorage, and Senator Davis. I support adamantly forward funding education. I understand economics and I understand budget cuts and constraints, but it takes courage and it takes commitment to our children to say, we will, as senators and congressmen of this state, put our children's education as the highest priority in federal funding and state funding. And it shouldn't be that we're negotiating items on hundreds of millions. We're the richest state in the union, and I know from running an oil and gas company that there are multiple companies out there doing exploratory up on the North Slope. I work for them, with them. As an active registered voter, I ask that you support Senator Davis and support our education and forward fund, and take that stand and say, we will support this. And when it comes to budget cuts, our children's education will not be on this list of where we're cutting. Ganeshish Hawa, thank you.
In my 8 years in the legislature, we have forward funded. We funded last year and we funded for next year. And I brought it up with the superintendents yesterday. We finally got into the terminology of forward funding, and then they throw us a curve. Now they want forward increment raising forward funding. Because we just got used to forward funding, we do that all the time. But they want increment increases. And that's where it gets scary. Like I said, you know, depends on where you're at, what you think. Yes, we're the richest state. We have 13 billion, 15 billion in savings, of which we owe 12 billion to the PERS and TERS retirement system. Now, you deduct that, we have a $9 billion operating budget this year. So you look at things and it's, it gets a little hard. If it wasn't for the price of oil, we'd be in trouble.
I'm just going to say one thing about forward funding. Yeah, we did have a committee to come together, and they did 3 years of funding, and it was not forward funding. We keep saying we're forward funding education, but what those 3 years did was told them how much money they were going to have for those 3 years. When I address the issue of forward funding, that we do it every year, I'm talking about what revenue does. Revenue has the money, they set it aside, and if it's whatever billions of dollars that is there, we do it 1 year in advance. That is forward funding. But we as legislators are not forward funding. We're not even early funding. Because if we were, we'll have a budget out there already now, so the school district would know how much money they're going to have. And it might be at the close of the session before we know that.